The system is in collapse. In New York, where they are expecting a shortage of medical workers due to the vaccine mandate, the governor is saying she'll bring in the National Guard if she has to. The media then says maybe she'll do it. She's considering it when she outright says that's her intent. And it is reported by numerous outlets they do expect there to be a shortage. The media is too spineless to come out and tell you the government is planning on sending in National Guard to take over private sector jobs as they destroy the economy and these industries. Sooner or later, your homes will be owned by the state and your medication, your medical treatments will be administered by the state. So the news should just come out and say, Governor states she will deploy National Guard because there will be a shortage, or at the very least, they expect a shortage due to firing all of these medical workers who refuse to get vaccinated. And so they will deploy the National Guard. It's the propagandists and the liars who are trying to defend the establishment, the state, the manipulation, the state capitalism, communism, fascism, whatever you want to call it. There are people who are actively, oh, it's no big deal. Oh, they're just doing this, just doing that, just doing this. Last year, it's just a mask. What's the big deal? Okay, wear a mask. The funny thing is conservatives were the first ones wearing masks. And then when they started mandating them, people started saying, the right started saying, no, sure, whatever. But I had no problem with the mask. I was like, sure, fine. I don't care. If I go to the store, I'll put the mask on. It's no big deal. It's a few seconds. But then it expanded to public buildings, to people working, 8 hours had to wear it all day. Kids then had to wear it. And it's getting a little over the top. And I'm like, okay, guys, if you're sick, you wear a mask. We get it. Things are getting a little crazy. And a lot of people came out and said, first, it's mask mandates. Sooner or later, they're going to be mandating we get vaccines. And what did the establishment media say? What did the left say? Oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Oh, you're crazy. And now where are we? We're at a point where Joe Biden has come out and flat out said, if you have to mandate vaccinations if your company has 100 or more employees. So what comes next? Oh, I think it's fairly obvious what comes next from here. Soon they're going to say all businesses will be required to mandate vaccination. All. Joe Biden's now saying we need 98% of people vaccinated to get back to normal. Oh, please. It was 70, then 80, and now 98%. I've had it with these people. It is so far beyond reproach. Many others have as well, but maybe not enough. In Staten Island, a group opposing indoor vaccine mandates stormed the food court on Staten Island. We also have many individuals, many other protests. We have this from Cincinnati.com. Anti-vaccine protesters attempting to block highways will face felony charges. That's right. People in Cincinnati are saying they will shut down highways over the vaccine mandates. But there's a bunch of stories like this. The Columbus Dispatch, Patriot shutdown. Protesters threaten to block highways to protest COVID vaccine mandates. This, I believe, this is Columbus. Okay. So, no. Okay, this may be Cincinnati as well. But a lot of people are planning things like this. There are a lot of other protests. We've got this one. Protesters rallied against vaccine mandate in downtown Spokane. And we've even seen in Santa Monica, people are outright saying no. The big story, I think, that one that we covered the other day, is that New York's planning on deploying the National Guard. So you guys need to realize what this means. Let me ask you a question. If 10 years ago I said Donald Trump would be president, that within a few years Joe Rogan would be leading the charge defending freedom, and people would storm into the Capitol disrupting the Electoral College vote, states would be banning travel to each other. People, a guy with a communist tattoo would shoot and kill a Trump supporter in cold blood in the street, and that roving bands of far-left extremists would be opening fire on right-wing groups in public. People would be like, shut up. That is crackpot-level derangement, they would say. It can't happen here. How many times have people said it can't happen here? And time again, they're proven wrong. It's literally happening now in front of our faces. We are at the point where the government is telling us, at least in New York, National Guard will replace private sector medical workers that we terminate. You know how things work in North Korea? Everybody joins the army. And then they are the ones doing civic duties and public service. So when we get to the point where you don't have private sector doctors, you have National Guardsmen, when you have massive investment firms buying up properties, and that's happening, we're getting dangerously close to Chinese-style communism. And, it's funny, because I think the Democrats are 100% on board with it. They're authoritarians. They lie. We had an economist on the other day. I love this metric. We had Robert Murphy. He is a PhD economist. And I said, is the economy good? And he went, no, no, like almost as if it was a stupid question to even ask. Look at the polling data. Democratic voters say it's good. Independent voters and Republicans say it's not good. Why? Democratic voters live in a crackpot conspiracy world where they just follow the piper. The Democratic establishment tells them what to do, and they do it. They say jump. The Democratic voters say how high. Independent voters and Republicans are the ones saying nah. Yet still, you get many independent voters still voting Democrat, and you get Democrats just blindly following the lies in the media. To the point now where you can literally have the governor of New York come out and say that the vaccine comes from God who delivered these workers to make it for us, and that we must have National Guardsmen or foreign workers coming in to displace those we will terminate who refuse to undergo this medical procedure. If I would have told you 3 years ago, even 3 years ago under Trump, as crazy as it was, that we are headed in this direction, people would still not believe me. If I said in 2020 there would be a pandemic, the government would shut down the economy, there would be major shortages, fuel shortages, labor shortages, the government would start printing money like crazy, that the Federal Reserve, that the reserve requirements for loans from banks would be removed, the M1 money stock would be dramatically increased, that restrictions on savings accounts would evaporate overnight, and the money supply would have trillions upon trillions dumped into it. People would be like, I don't believe you. It can't happen here. But what's funny is we often believe that when it comes to some kind of major crisis or apocalyptic scenario, that the frogs in the pot will be snapped out of it and jump out of the pot like, whoa, something crazy is happening. But even as rapidly as we are watching the systemic collapse in front of our faces, as quickly as it's happening, people are still saying it can't happen here. It was great the other day on the IRL podcast. Check out, I don't know if you guys like or if you listen to Timcast IRL, which is the conversational podcast I do. Check it out. It's there's no monologue. I mean, this is just like a 20-minute monologue for me, but that show is more conversational. But the other day, Ian, who is on the show, said he doesn't think there would be a civil war or secession because it can't happen here. It's a fantasy. It can never happen. And I'm just like, okay, look, we've got Texas talking about independence, New Hampshire. We've got the state, the Jefferson state state of Jefferson movement, or counties in Oregon want to secede from Oregon, join Idaho. So we're seriously facing some weird moments here. But Ian tells me, he's like, New Hampshire is not going to secede, right? I think it's like 5 or 6 reps in New Hampshire are in favor of a bill allowing the state to vote on seceding from the union. And there's like several hundred reps in New Hampshire. So I'm not convinced that this will go anywhere for the time being. But Ian said it can't happen here. And I'm like, Ian, like Donald Trump was the president. People are shooting each other in the streets still to this day. We had a guy shot and killed in Portland. And now over the past couple of weeks, there have been shootouts. Apparently they arrested the guy who just starts wildly shooting into the streets. You've got groups of Antifa pointing rifles at a dude in a truck. It can't happen here. Are you paying attention? Now you got the government talking about deploying the National Guard to displace the workers they fire who won't undergo a medical procedure. It can't happen here. It is literally happening here right now. We are watching it happen. I watched this video. We have the green room for our guests. It's downstairs, and so throughout the day I'll go down there, and there's snacks, and there's a bar, and that's where the staff hangs out and stuff like that. And they were playing this video from, I think it was Vsauce. You guys know Vsauce? He was talking about the perception of time and how we view history and things like that. And it was interesting because it's something I've often talked about, that we view history through a condensed lens, that we have this warped perspective on what time is. One of the interesting things is that he was like, when we think of Ronald Reagan, we imagine an old man. When we think of Marilyn Monroe, we think of a young woman. Why? Well, because Marilyn Monroe died. But what about when Ronald Reagan was a young man and he was an actor, and people certainly remember those days, right? to us as we go through history. We look back in the history books and we see Ronald Reagan as an old man, and we see Marilyn Monroe as a young woman. And so we have this view of them as young or old. One of the points he makes is that we have this image of the Queen of England as this really old woman. Marilyn Monroe is a young woman, yet they were both born the same year. But that's fascinating. Nobody imagines the Queen of England as this young woman because she's old today. What point I'm getting at is we look at history through a condensed lens. We read about the Civil War. We read about the Revolution. And the American Revolution was over 20 years. 20 years the American Revolution was taking place. Civil War was about 5, but there was a lot leading up to it. And so in the American Revolution, you have like these moments where they're like the battle for Bunker Hill and the Boston Massacre and the Tea Party. And it's like, those were like far apart from each other. Like when we view history, we're like Paul Revere Road and then X happened and then Y happened. And we imagine it like the revolution, all these major moments happened in the span of a month and then fighting broke out. When in reality, it was like there was rebellion in the colonies for like a decade. For like a decade. And we didn't have a constitution for like a decade after we declared independence. It's crazy how long the fighting went on. So now we take a look at what's going on in the United States with secession, with the overt authoritarianism, despotism on the rise. I mean, the National Guard driving buses and stuff, people don't understand. They're like, oh, but that's what the National Guard's supposed to. No, the National Guard does provide support. Sure, civil support in emergencies. But, it's been almost 2 years. We're not talking about like a fire happened and the National Guard comes in to provide infrastructure. We're talking about 2 years of economic destruction, shortages, labor shortages, wages are being depressed. Now, the media is like, they'll lie to you and they say, wages went up by X percent, not telling you that inflation's gone up substantially more than that. And the funny thing is the official inflation number they'll say is like 5.2% or whatever. But take a look at the M1 money stock. And it's like, first of all, they changed the rules so savings now counts as checking. So there's a major spike in money supply, meaning people could go into their savings account and spend it as if it was a checking account. They got rid of, apparently this is according to Robert Murphy, told us the other day, they got rid of the reserve requirements for banks to give out loans, meaning banks can just start printing money like crazy. And then you look at the M1 money stock after the rule change and it's still skyrocketing. And then you get people like Max Kaiser saying the actual inflation rate is probably around 14%. We are in an absolute state of collapse and fascist takeover. Maybe fascism is the wrong word. I think it's funny that the left uses the word capitalism to mean corporatism and the right uses communism to mean authoritarianism. And I'm looking at what's going on. And there's a funny meme. Candace Owens said something like massive private companies buying up all of the houses, using government subsidy is communism. And then all of these leftists were like, it's just so dumb. That's literally capitalism. And I'm like, you're both out of it. OK, it is authoritarian takeover. It is state commucapitalism. I don't care what you call it. When elitists control the money supply and then work between the private and public sector to control whatever they want, I don't care what you call it. It's bad. How about, the left stop acting like the capitalism? Call it whatever you want. Crony capitalism, corruption. It's all a problem. Now, I will say there's a lot of ANCAP libertarian types who are the ones that are saying like, private corporations can do what they want. I'm like, nah, I don't think so. I don't care if it's the government or a monopoly. Centralized power is bad for everybody. So there's got to be a way to knock down that centralized power and decentralize it. I don't trust the government to do the job. You give the government power and they just use it to empower their buddies and then form these crony capitalist deals like they're doing now. The lucrative merger of corporation and state. I don't have the answers. I can only tell you that witnessing medical workers being terminated, they were heroes. Remember this? They were heroes on the front line in New York, hands on their hips, holding up signs saying, you're anti-vaxxer. Now they're being tossed to the gutter. Remember those photos of the nurses standing in the street blocking the anti-restriction protesters? It's amazing to me that at first we had anti-lockdown protesters. Then we had anti-maskers. Now we have anti-vaxxers. What's next? Anti-campers? So I think what comes after the vax mandate is the booster mandates, right? First, they said masks. Then they said masks for everybody, masks for kids. Now they're saying vaccine mandate. Now they're saying boosters. Joe Biden got his booster. Did you get yours? Now, when it comes to that stuff, I think it's between you and your doctor. But what happens when they get rid of private sector doctors and start bringing in public sector medics and medically trained National Guard? No longer are you getting a private voice. Ryan Long has a sketch. Just put it out called Trust the Experts. You guys definitely got to check out Ryan Long comedy. And it's a scientist being like, experts agree, we all agree. And then this guy walks in and goes, I'm an expert. I read the data and I've come to a slightly different conclusion. And then he just starts beating the crap out of him. I said experts agree. Here we are. Watching what's happening in New York should be a gigantic 300-foot red flag flying over the capital of this country. That the National Guard is going to be displacing private sector workers because the government just terminated private sector employees. This is what they're doing. I've heard the stories when Joe Biden said, if you got at least 100 employees or more, you're going to have to mandate vaccines. And then you see the posts on social media where people's companies are like, Joe Biden said it, so we're doing it. Joe Biden can't rule by decree. You don't have to just blindly follow the president who's ruling by decree. They called Trump a fascist. We are literally watching some form of fascism or authoritarianism sweep across the country. It's happening extremely rapidly, and there are still people who say it can't happen here. My friends, it's literally in front of your face, and it'll get worse. So, after the vax mandate, it's the booster mandate, which is still in line with the vax mandate. But okay, so after everyone's get vaccinated, what happens? Well, they keep saying we have to protect the vaccinated from the unvaccinated. We have stories like this from the Daily Mail. Married Michigan couple who were both fully vaccinated but had underlying health conditions die of COVID just 1 minute apart while holding hands. Well, that's right. The vaccine may reduce the severity. The vaccine may reduce the likelihood that you get COVID, but you can still get it, you can still die, and you can still spread it. People are going to be less inclined to get vaccinated when they see stories like this. There will still be people refusing to get vaccinated because I think they're going to make choices for themselves. And what the media doesn't include in their articles, the nuance, is that when, or Joe Biden, when he comes out and says, still 25% of Americans won't do the right thing and just get this medical treatment. And I'm like, maybe they went to their doctor and were told not to. You did include that in the metrics. Maybe they're making choices based on underlying medical conditions. That's none of your business. So what happens next? Separating the clean from the unclean. The plague rats. We must protect the vaccinated from the plague rats. And that's what you'll get. In Australia, they're doing it. There was a guy sitting outside, took his mask off, smoking a cigarette. The cops came and threw him to the ground and arrested him. And then you get these sycophantic, pathetic losers like the Quillette. I single them out. I get the mainstream media in Australia is all on board with authoritarianism. But if you're going to claim to be for free thought and freedom, at least stand up for it. That's what we get. People are already talking about, quarantine centers and hotels and things like that in the United States. Now, there have been conspiracy theories about camps going back for decades. I don't know about that stuff. What I do know is if we keep moving in this direction, and we have been with an increasing exponential escalation, we eventually get to the point where they will say vaccinated only, like in New York where people were protesting. Sooner or later, it will come to your state by federal mandate. That's when things get spicy. I wonder, will West Virginia fall in line? New Hampshire, I think the answer is actually maybe. Now, New Hampshire's got a lot of free staters, so maybe northern New Hampshire, they're going to be like, get out of here, leave me alone. In Florida and Texas, not going to fly. West Virginia, I'm not so confident about. They followed the mask mandates, and a lot of businesses in West Virginia were destroyed because their politicians are dumb. The people of West Virginia love freedom. I live in West Virginia, and it's best Virginia. It is. They broke away from Virginia because they're like, nah, slavery is not all right. And I'm like, that's cool. But in West Virginia, they still said, we're going to decimate our already bad economy. That was amazing to me. I talk to people who are saying the economy is in serious danger, that our businesses are being destroyed, and West Virginia still decides to start shutting things down. Now, they didn't do it as severely as many other states, but they still had a lot of mandates that Florida, Texas, South Dakota didn't. So I wonder, when these mandates come down at the federal level, who will reject it? But here's what I think. Texas already said, we're going to do our own suppressors, screw the ATF. And the ATF said, you can't do that. And they said, too bad, we can do what we want. We're already seeing sanctuary states. We're already seeing calls for independence or secession. If Joe Biden continues on the path he's on, and New York and these other states keep doing these insane things, people are going to start fleeing. Sentiment will start, in like Texas, for instance, it's going to get more and more red, more and more demanding of freedom, and then crazy stuff. No one's willing to back down. And I stated this, years ago. The culture war is not just about pronouns. It's about tribalism. It's about the left saying, you're a plague rat. We see it with tribes when they say that tribe is evil and our tribe is good. It doesn't matter if you're good or evil. It just matters that they say it and then they fight. Like when I went to Belfast in Northern Ireland, and you go to the Peace Wall, and on one side of the wall, it's like Israel. And on the other side of the wall, it's like Palestine. And I'm like, what the does that have to do with Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland and Great Britain and the Crown? And you look and you can see there's leftist causes on one side and right-wing causes on the other, or whatever you want to call it. And I'm talking to one of the locals and he says, it's just tribalism. If one side says something, the other side says the opposite. So what happens is, one side says we are oppressed people conquered by the British, and we empathize with the people of Palestine who are under occupation. So the other side says, yeah, well, actually, we're the lost tribe of Israel, so we support Israel. And it's like, it has nothing to do with your conflict. That's where we are. It does not matter what the science says, because the left is just like, have the steamroller move on through, bulldoze everything. It doesn't matter what the facts state. When it comes to, say, Lab Leak, the media is in line with leftist tribalism. They can lie and publish fake news all day, every day. Hunter Biden laptop story, Russiagate, Ukrainegate. And those of us who are paying attention are watching this saying, well, that's not true. And when you say that, what you're basically saying is, I defy the order. And so the cult just gets mad. And it's like Donald Sutherland was in Body Snatchers when he points to someone and goes, and screams at her, because they're indoctrinated. They're in line. They don't care about what's true. They care about the power of their cult, and they want to fit in. They are mindless. And the funny thing is, they'll say the same thing about us. The only problem with that logic, we had a guy super chatted us on IRL when he was like, you're as delusional as the people you claim to hate. And we say the same thing about you. The funny thing is, I'm not a Republican. I voted Republican down ticket for the first time this past election. I had, voting for senator and congressman, because I'm like, the Democrats have gone insane. The Republicans I disagree with, but at least they're like America. I don't believe a lot of, I get flack from the right. They call me a leftist for saying I don't think, I don't agree with the mass fraud theories. I think the Democrats just universal mail-in voting, rule changes, the shadow campaign, all that stuff. It's all in the media. I don't think they need fake ballots to have better ground game. There's certainly a lot of interesting things, going on with the audits that we can get into. But I get flack from the right. No, I don't blindly just believe whatever I'm told. The right, for the most part, is an eclectic group of people. Still, some people on the right will give me flack, but a lot of them are just like, we'll entertain nuance in these arguments, even if we disagree politically. But the left just blindly believes what the media says, even when the media says things contradictory. That's the funny thing. They're sophists who just desperately try to defend the tribe, and they have a machine propping them up. I love it when I saw this article. It said, Joe Biden doesn't have a sycophantic media the way that Donald Trump did. With Donald Trump, the right-wing media machine would defend him no matter what. And I'm like, Joe Biden's defended almost entirely by the mainstream media, and Donald Trump was smeared nonstop in the media. This is the game they play. They'll smack you in the face and then point to the right. They'll tell the leftists, Vox.com wrote, there are like 11 million far right, alt-right. And there's not. They make it up. But these people just blindly believe it without fact-checking. So here's what happens. There's an audit in Arizona. And I get a lot of people saying, Tim, why aren't you talking about the AZ audit? Well, I've got to investigate and I've got to dig through it. And it's complicated. I don't just come out right away and say the tribe has deemed it so I will espouse I don't do that. You can get that from anybody else. You're not going to get it from me. And if it's hard for me to parse through the data, I don't know what to tell you. Other than I've been looking at it and I got to try and understand it better, and maybe need to bring in a guest to do a special segment on timcast.com to talk about what it means. We've had Matt Brainerd on the show. We've had Steve Bannon. We've talked about a lot of this stuff already. But I don't blindly follow suit. We had Chris Martenson talk about ivermectin. I say I disagree. I need evidence. I think people should talk to their doctors. I don't blindly trust the government, but I don't blindly distrust them anyway either. I need facts. When you have Republicans who are willing to compromise and Democrats who aren't, Democrats who blindly believe what they're told and then contradict the same thing the next day, certainly you can tell who the cult is. But it's pointless. And I've been saying this since 2017, 2016. I've been saying forever. You think you're right? We think we're right. It doesn't matter. If they think they're right and they refuse to see reason, the only thing we can do is prepare to protect ourselves. Because now it's vaccine mandates. What's tomorrow? They're quite literally saying if you want to work anywhere, you've got to get a medical procedure. What comes after that? I hope you're seriously paying attention to this, because all these people, we've had people on the show be like, I don't think anything's going to happen. I'm like, what do you mean nothing's going to happen? It's happening. But whatever, man. I'll do my thing. You do yours. All right. I think we should be building culture. We should be taking care of ourselves. Homesteading is really, really smart at this point. That's why land is wow, man. People are getting off of fiat. This is the craziest thing. The stuff I've been hearing, people buying massive properties sight unseen. There's property where like 2 years ago, it was worthless. Like it's a couple $100,000 for massive acreage, now going for $1 million because people are just buying it sight unseen. Rich people are getting away from cities. We'll see how that plays out. All right, I won't keep this one too long. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.